Hello and welcome to Frequency Bone Music Connection Fall Edition. And this is video 5 of the AMA Ask Me Anything video series. Now, this particular question was put to me about exactly a month ago. And I had it right here and it disappeared. And it's from Mighty Quinn 94. And he asks some things. Two in particular. What has your life experience been that has brought you to be such a deep thinker and somebody who is always looking outside and beyond the box? And then he puts, I am always trying to, but I find myself being pulled back in again very often. I notice and admire how you take the time to think and look big picture. Well, I'm going to be concise about aspects of this. Because it's all about being in the quest. We're all on a journey, whether we know it or not. Until the time you're in a conscious journey. And so if you choose to play an instrument, for example, and you have a goal with what you want to do with that instrument, then guess what? That becomes very deliberate, very, very focused. And you start to learn certain things. Oh, I can't do this. I can do that. And then you find out people who will help you with what you say you want. And some of those people have a very clear idea of what that should be, because that's what worked for them a lot of times, right? Now, there's nothing wrong with that. It's true. It's honest to teach in a way that worked for you. What happens, I think, to a person to get them to think deeper or outside of a box, as Quinn is saying, is something might happen to them where they have to rethink the whole thing. Now, I can look back in my life and certain things that happened to me maybe pushed me in that direction. But even before those things, I was just, like a kid, young kid. I loved the thought of dinosaurs. I loved looking up at the sky at night or during the day and pretend I was floating in the clouds. I thought about that more than maybe playing sports. Even though I did. I had fun playing kickball. Or at school playing softball. All those things. I used to laugh and have a great time with my friends. Right? But something was moving me and pushing me, and I felt that very young. In fact, my mother told me at one time, she said, ever since you were, really little and you started to move, she said, it looked like you knew where you were going, which is an interesting observation. And I would set goals for myself at a very young age. Now, I always wondered about things. Certain things didn't make sense. I'd have, as I put in another video, I'd have very conscious moments, and I think many children can do this and have done it. You have like all of a sudden things stop and you're very, very aware. And then, it's time to get on the school bus. Or it's time to do this. Or it's time to do that. And wanted to play trombone. Trombone was a very strong urge for me ever since I was between 4 and 5. And I had to wait. So that was interesting. And then my parents got divorced. So already that's taking the confinement of a mom and dad being at home, which is kind of its own little box setup, right? And that's broken. So different things at different points in people's life, very big disappointments or very big, fulfillments, or they feel them that way. Someone might have confirmation. Another person might have a bar mitzvah. I had a bar mitzvah. And those are marks in our cultures of points in time. And to some people, it can be quite significant. What that means. Oh, you're here now. It's like a mapping, isn't it, of life. But some of these things that we do out of tradition that might have had greater meaning maybe lost their real meaning. Is a bar mitzvah just a time to collect checks from the relatives? Or gifts at Christmas time, or confirmation, or points of you graduated from this school, went up, and then you got to, is there something more significant than getting gifts and dinners? Right? It's a mark of time. But it is its own box. And I think in certain ways that box has lost its organic significance. And so people question, well, what's the validity of this? What's the validity? What's supposed to be the value? So I started to think about that aspect, maybe not in the kind of language I'm thinking of now, but in my feelings. I thought, wow, I want to be really good at least at one thing. I was very driven that way. And I loved music. So I went for it. So it went from something that you just do when it's time to go to band to I'm in pursuit. Didn't use that word, but I know I wanted something. Therefore, you go on a conscious, deliberate quest. And when you do that, how could it not bring you face to face with what you can and can't do, and your tolerances, and your ability to keep going in the midst of what would seem to be adversity or things not going well? How deeply, how urgently, how compelling is that goal of yours that's not going to make you stop? So people, I had a tendency, I was very big into UFOs when I was very, very young. And so I didn't care if people were making fun of me, which they were. I'm no stranger to being made fun of. Okay? Just don't touch my brother and sister the wrong way, or you'd find that this little person could get really ticked. So sometimes what breaks us out of a box is, are you getting any support to be your own person? And if not, is it strong enough to continue? And that's tough. Because if I've said in other videos, environment is extremely powerful. And I was, even though divorced home and everything, it was a supportive environment. It was a supportive environment. They didn't care how great I did in school. They knew I had a name. It makes it easier on a parent. So, in a sense, from having such a strong pursuit at such a young age, I was already out of the box. Because that wasn't really happening with a lot of kids around me, except for Jack Morris, who, if you're a baseball fan, and I only know I'm not really a baseball fan, but Jack Morris was one of the great pitchers. He was on the Detroit Tigers, and then he went back, played in the Minnesota Twins, his hometown where he grew up, and he won a World Series. So, and we were in the same sixth grade class. We were pretty good friends. You know, he'd get really ticked if I hit a ball off of him, which I did. I hit a home run in softball off of Jack Morris. But the point is, we both had an aim. So if you have a strong goal, then that puts you in another kind of mindset, because you're prioritizing your time differently. All we have is time here. This is all time. This part of creation. It's all time. Actually, anything manifests as time. You look at a hummingbird go by. You look at an insect go by. You know, those are very short periods of time. The form we're in, it's all time. Meaning it has a beginning, a lifespan, and an end. Now, because I had a real preoccupation with death, boy, that makes you want to make sure you get that goal in. And thinking about that, then, well, what is after death? And is there death? And why are we here? And I never lost those desires. The world didn't interest me enough to take me out of that. Yes, I had my pursuit, and I got into a very big orchestra, as you know, at a very young age. But my real pursuit, I'll tell you, I was in the orchestra, and within a month I thought, is this all there is? And a feeling went through me I'll never forget. It was a true awakening moment. Now that's kind of an out-of-the-box attitude for someone who's supposed to be just over. And I was grateful. But I thought something was missing for me. And I love the music. Never lost the love. But I knew there was more to life than that. And I knew it could be approached in a deeper way. And I did have conductors that approached it deeply. Very thankful for them. And some musicians in the orchestra that really never lost their fervor for the deeper part of music for them and what they were trying to say and branch out to and connect to. So, depending on your view of life, in my experience with looking at life, it's never-ending awe. And sometimes maybe you have to, relax and, have some peaceful, settled times. I'm all for that. But I feel like part of me is always in pursuit. And that doesn't mean I'm always anxious. It means that it's at incredible journey. And then in times where people don't even know what's true, I think the past 2.5 years with the situation and the division that the whole 2.5 year situation has been causing, that's enough to snap people out of any little box they were in if they're paying attention. Now, since I kind of lived in a place that was not too attached to any boxes, it wasn't that big of an adjustment, but yet another part of it was. If you want truth, it's going to melt down, coming from what my life has lived through. If you really want it, it's going to melt down that which stands in the way of you wanting it. It's like a flame, and anything that isn't where it's at will melt or disintegrate the stronger that flame gets. I want that for me. I don't see any other way. And I didn't even know totally what that way means. All I know is the more you're tuning into that for real and not building an identity around it, but just being with it, well, it'll show you where your tolerances are. There's many rooms in the great cathedral of life. And so, when getting on a kind of taking this into a very practical level of playing, for example, when Quinn was mentioning, let me just see, I don't want to mix up his words. He was saying, look, I'm always trying to, get out of the box, but I find myself being pulled back in again very often. If you notice you're getting pulled back in, that's excellent. That means you're awake. That means you're aware. And so say, hey, here I am. All these habits that I really, some of these I don't want, are coming up and rearing their head again, and I'm falling back into the attitude of, tunnel vision, not seeing the bigger picture, not balancing tunnel vision and the big picture. Be focused. Like driving a car, if you're just like this, sometimes it works very well at night when the light's glaring at you in the face like this. I look at a certain part of the road so I don't get blinded. But sometimes we've got to take a scan. Right? A bigger scan. And so if you're aware you're in this box and falling back into it and feeling confined, then it's calling for you to try different ways, isn't it? But at least you're aware of it. So this brings up what is falling into a rut on a certain level of even just playing an instrument. My advice has always been you start with what you can do. I don't care how teeny that is. I don't care if it seems so elementary your psychology can't handle it. Okay? You have to start there. And if your psychology is getting into a way that, in the way of you realizing that, then you realize, you know what, that got into you. That's our culture getting into you. And we are the world, as J. Krishnamurti often said. We are the world. It's a very interesting idea. But sometimes what we think is so personal just not in us. It's not. It's in the environment. And then we take it on as an identity. So, my feeling is the more you're aware of what is this box, it kind of sounds like a coffin, right? Where we're trapped inside. And we really can't breathe. And we're not moving. Is to keep moving. Not anxiety, fear-driven, everything a state of emergency, but keep things moving. Fluid. Wow, this is happening. Maybe I should be playing this particular solo or excerpt or whatever I'm working on musically, let's just say, in different ways. So you start with what you can do and gradually move beyond that, no matter what that can-do point is. And then maybe just try it different ways. So you can make this more malleable, more expansive, the piece itself and your relationship to it, as opposed to then creating another box where this piece only goes like this. No, it doesn't. But if most of the environment is saying to you, this is the way it goes, are you going to be brave enough to go, I challenge that? Not for the sake of just challenging, but for the sake of my wanting to find out where my life fits into that. What is the bigger picture of art? There's all these conditions with everything. We live in a world of conditions. If it's cold outside and there's ice on the road, well, you can't go the same speed unless you want to be in an accident. So it's the same road, but the conditions have changed. So being in an orchestra of a certain caliber, it's still an orchestra. The position of second horn is still the position of second horn, but maybe some of the criteria has changed. Whether the fashion and style of that particular time, that particular section, what instruments they want to be played, what they think is good articulation and length of notes, that has changed over time. And you know what? It's not always better just because something changes. That's just the time. It's not always better. I'm sorry. I don't buy it. Then you put the fashion you're in another box and created another one. And eventually that'll break down. So why don't you break it down ahead of time? So if you're finding yourself falling into a box, question it. Say, hey, wow, how can I get this lid off? I know what I'll do. I'll try it totally different. You just got to try. You just got to try. You just got to try. And the more you practice that, and the more you get close to you wanting to be the fullness that you can be, then you will be at greater depth. because you want to continue in order to exist. And you do that by change in order to continue to exist, as my great life mentor said. I hope this is making sense. You don't have to remember this, word for word. Get the gist of what I'm saying. If it's useful for you. Two, and one of the reasons maybe why I think in the bigger pictures I've been teaching since I've been 12 and have worked with many human beings, and they have not all been the same. All of them need air and a dental structure and an embouchure and lungs and a kidneys and a heart that beats and a brain, and there's the standard equipment, right, that needs to be the same. But those various ensemble members inside of the symphony of ourselves don't always have the same set of balances. Some people have to turn up the bass a little bit. Some people have to turn up the highs a little bit. People have to think more of a horizontal line. Others need to get on track of the more vertical, and then they find the relationship between all these pairs of opposites that you will never be able to escape from. You learn to work with them. You want to work with nature's laws, not against nature's laws. And that in itself can be a discovery journey. So if you can get used to the fact, I'm on a discovery journey, you'll gain more and more accomplishment. People want to think, I'm a master, I can do anything. Well, you know what? If a player wants to continue to keep playing and their body's changing and everything, they're going to have to find what that change needs. And the mind changes too. So, number 2, he says, if is something in one's playing where a player thinks, I'm not good at that, or even, I can't do that, how can we change our mindset, perspective? Find the can-do point. I'm sorry that sounds so boring. I can't do that. Well, where's the can point? You just described the can't point. I can't do everything. You know what? I hate to tell you this. I'm not sure there's any player who can do everything. And if there are players who can technically do most of what you'd want to hear, that doesn't mean they're capturing the essence of what maybe even the composer wanted. So, someone might be able to play I'm Getting Sentimental Over You. Sound really nice. It might not sound like Dorsey. And do they have to? Maybe they could just be inspired. You see, because of certain players who have taken it upon themselves to do more and more difficult solos. And I knew this for years, that basically the trombone and the French horn, for example, have the same range. So my brother is a phenomenal horn player, and I used to play along with him a lot. I was the older brother. And we'd play, all this horn duets and stuff. Brandenburg, won. And I'd play first sometimes, he'd play first, and I'd play second, he'd play second. So, and realize, well, then they have to play till Eulenspiegel, and they go down to concert F. They have to play, Shostakovich 5, and they go down into a really low range, the trigger range of the trombone. I thought, it's the same basic range. So I started to play a lot of horn literature. But nowadays, for example, it's like the bass trombone and the tenor trombone. I'm not sure what the difference is. Well, what if you can't do that? Should you just quit? I'm serious. Should you just quit? Because you can't do all these people are doing? Nonsense. That's the box of competition and comparison. Expand on what you have. Deepen what you can do. Deepen what you can do. And I'll bet you, from that platform and that foundation, more will happen. And you'll even start thinking more out of the box as it's defined as a stumbling block. The box that's a stumbling block. I'm in a box. Or there's this whole judgment thing. No. You got to say, I'm on a quest, I'm on a journey, whatever that means to you, and I want to go beyond that. And then maybe life will say, hey, you know what? Maybe you'll develop something that's not thought of yet. So, the fact you're aware you're in a box, excellent starting point. How do you crush the box? Do different things that are not a part of the box. I know one time, someone was playing a trombone audition at one of the schools I teach at, and they were breathing through their nose. And the person went, ay, 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 one of the judges, ay, ay, breathing through the nose. Well, let's see, there's 2 little nostrils here. They can breathe if they're not plugged. It's not one way to breathe. Please, please, please. There might be more efficient ways to breathe. So, good luck in your journey. Everyone, good luck. Melt that box, and you'll find that box in your habitual habit life. Maybe you need to change.